Burt Lancaster reveals list of his many sexual partners, men and women. Burt Lancaster was born Burton Stephen Lancaster on November the 2nd, 1913, in New York City. He grew up in a working-class family in East Harlem during the Great Depression. His parents, Elizabeth and James Lancaster, instilled in him a sense of discipline and hard work that would shape his career. Though the family struggled financially, young Burt found joy in physical activities, particularly gymnastics and acrobatics, which would later define his early career. He attended Dwight Clinton High School, where his athletic talent stood out, earning him a scholarship to New York University. However, restless and adventurous by nature, he eventually left college to join the circus as an acrobat, forming part of the famous K Brothers Trapeze Act. This early experience not only honed his remarkable athleticism, but also developed his stage presence and fearlessness, traits that would later serve him well on the big screen. World War II interrupted his performing career when Lancaster enlisted in the United States Army. He served with distinction in the Special Services Division, entertaining troops and organizing performances to boost morale. His wartime experience deepened his understanding of humanity and hardship, giving him a quiet strength and empathy that would later permeate his acting. After returning home, a chance encounter with a theatrical producer led him to the stage where his raw talent and magnetic presence caught the attention of Hollywood scouts. Before long, Burt Lancaster made his film debut in the noir classic The Killers, 1946, opposite Ava Gardner. His performance was electrifying, brooding, intense, and full of emotional complexity. Almost overnight, he became a star, hailed as one of the most promising new actors in post-war Hollywood. Lancaster's early roles often emphasized his rugged physicality and stoic demeanor, but he was far from content to be typecast. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, he proved his extraordinary range by tackling roles that explored both moral depth and psychological nuance. In From Here to Eternity, 1953, he delivered one of his most memorable performances as Sergeant Milton Warden, engaging in a forbidden romance with Deborah Kerr in one of cinema's most iconic beach scenes. The film won 8 Academy Awards and solidified Lancaster's reputation as a major dramatic talent. Yet he was equally comfortable taking on darker, more challenging roles, such as his portrayal of the ruthless gossip columnist J.J. Hunsaker in Sweet Smell of Success, 1957, a performance that remains a masterclass in controlled menace and cynicism. Lancaster's ability to oscillate between heroism and moral ambiguity set him apart from many of his contemporaries, earning him critical respect and industry admiration. Beyond acting, Burt Lancaster was also a trailblazer behind the camera. In 1948, he co-founded the production company Hecht Hill Lancaster, one of the first actor-run companies in Hollywood. This allowed him to take creative control of his projects and champion films with social and political messages. Under this banner, he produced groundbreaking works like Marty, 1955, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture and highlighted the dignity of ordinary people. His commitment to producing meaningful, human-centered stories reflected his own convictions and intellectual curiosity. Lancaster was never afraid to tackle controversial themes or to lend his name to projects that challenged the Hollywood status quo. In doing so, he paved the way for future generations of actors to take control of their artistic destinies. His career continued to evolve through the 1960s and 1970s as he moved from romantic and heroic leads to complex, world-weary characters that reflected the maturity of his craft. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his role in Elmer Gantry, 1960, portraying a charismatic but morally conflicted preacher, a performance that showcased his dynamic range and fearless approach to emotionally charged material. Later, in films such as Birdman of Alcatraz, 1962, and Atlantic City, 1980, Lancaster demonstrated a profound sensitivity and depth that only grew stronger with age. His role in Atlantic City, opposite Susan Sarandon, earned him renewed acclaim and an Academy Award nomination, proving that even in his later years, he remained one of the most commanding presences in cinema. Off-screen, Burt Lancaster was known as a deeply intelligent and socially conscious man. He was politically outspoken, supporting civil rights, opposing the Vietnam War, and championing liberal causes long before it was fashionable in Hollywood to do so. Colleagues often described him as intense, opinionated, and principled, with a strong sense of justice and humanity. Yet beneath his commanding exterior, he possessed warmth, wit, and generosity. He was married 3 times and had 5 children, maintaining a strong sense of family despite the demands of his career. Those who knew him personally often remarked on his integrity and the quiet compassion that belied his formidable screen persona. Burt Lancaster's personal life, though often overshadowed by his dazzling Hollywood career, was marked by several significant relationships that reflected both his evolving personality and the different stages of his life. His marriages reveal much about the man behind the charismatic screen presence, a person driven by passion, ambition, and a constant search for meaning and companionship amid the unpredictable world of fame. Lancaster's first marriage was to June Ernst, a woman he married in 1935, long before his rise to stardom. At the time, Lancaster was still struggling to find his place in the world, working a series of odd jobs during the Great Depression and performing in the circus as an acrobat. June and Burt's marriage represented the innocence and youthful optimism of 2 people trying to build a future together despite limited means. They shared the struggles of a pre-fame life, and June was by his side when he was simply Burt Lancaster the dreamer, not yet the Hollywood legend. However, the demands of an entertainment career that was beginning to take shape, along with the pressures of his growing ambition, began to take a toll on their relationship. As Lancaster's life shifted toward acting and performance, their paths started to diverge. After more than a decade together, they divorced in 1946, marking the end of his first great personal chapter. Shortly after his first marriage ended, Lancaster met Norma Anderson, who would become not only his second wife, but also the mother of his 5 children. They married in 1946, the same year his career began to ascend rapidly, following his breakout role in The Killers, 1946. Norma played a central role in this pivotal period of his life, offering stability and grounding as Lancaster's fame exploded across Hollywood. The couple's union lasted for over 2 decades, during which time they experienced both the glamour and the strain that accompanied life in the film industry. Norma was often seen as the balancing force in Burt's life, someone who provided a sense of normalcy amid the chaos of celebrity. Together they navigated the challenges of raising a family. While Burt's demanding schedule often kept him away from home for long stretches, however, the very qualities that made Lancaster a captivating actor, his intensity, independence, and restless pursuit of excellence, also made him a difficult husband. His long hours on set, frequent travels, and rumored infidelities contributed to growing tensions between them. After 23 years of marriage, Burt and Norma divorced in 1969. It was a deeply personal turning point that coincided with a transformation in his professional outlook as well, as he began exploring more complex and socially conscious film projects in the 1970s. After his second marriage ended, Lancaster spent many years without remarrying, instead devoting much of his time to his work, his children, and various humanitarian causes. He was known to have several romantic relationships during this period, but none that led to marriage. As he aged, however, he seemed to soften emotionally, showing a deeper appreciation for companionship and love later in life. In 1990, at the age of 77, Burt Lancaster married Susan Martin, his 3rd and final wife. Their marriage was a reflection of a quieter, more reflective period in his life. By then, Lancaster's career had slowed due to health issues, and he was no longer the fiery young star of the 1950s and 1960s. Susan, who was much younger than him, became not only his partner, but also his devoted caretaker as he faced declining health following a severe stroke in the early 1990s. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and affection, a gentle bond that provided Lancaster with companionship and peace in his final years. When Burt Lancaster's family gathered in his Beverly Hills home after his passing, they expected to find the usual assortment of mementos, film scripts, old love letters, trophies, and faded photographs from a life lived in front of the camera. What none of them expected was the note, a single handwritten confession tucked inside the drawer of his writing desk, sealed with the initials BL. It began simply, "They say a man's life is measured by the love he gives and the love he hides. I have hidden mine long enough." The letter stretched across several pages, his familiar bold handwriting revealing stories he had never dared to speak while alive. Hollywood's golden idol, the strong, athletic leading man who played soldiers and lovers with equal conviction, laid bare the truth about the heart behind the legend. On Cary Grant, Lancaster wrote, "Cary was the first man who taught me charm could be armor. We were both masters of performance. He with his effortless grace, me with my rough edges." There was a night after a studio party in '49 when we sat on the balcony of his home in Palm Springs. He poured gin, I rolled cigarettes, and we spoke about how lonely it was to be adored by the world yet unknown by anyone real. I suppose that was the night I realized love could hide behind laughter. Lancaster described Grant as a gentleman of masks, a man he admired and envied, but also someone he could never fully possess. Their friendship was tinged with tension, desire beneath denial. On J. Edgar Hoover, he wrote, "People will never believe this one, but Hoover was fascinated by me. It wasn't love, it was control. He wanted to own everyone he couldn't be. He'd invite me to dinners, talk about patriotism, and watch my every move like a hawk. There was power in the way he looked at people, and fear, too. One night he told me, 'You could destroy men just by smiling, Burt.' I laughed, but he meant it." Hoover didn't love. He collected. The note suggested Lancaster's encounters with Hoover were less romantic and more psychological, an uneasy dance between curiosity, danger, and manipulation in the shadows of Cold War Hollywood. On Rock Hudson, he wrote, "Rock was innocent, sweet, quiet, always worried about being caught. I remember holding him once after a rap party when he said, 'You don't think they'll ever let us just be, do you?' I told him, 'No, Rock, they won't. But we'll make them believe our lies so well they'll think they're truth.' He smiled through tears. That broke me." It was clear from the tone that Lancaster held a deep tenderness for Hudson, a shared understanding of the double life demanded by their industry. On Ricky Nelson, he said, "Ricky was the kid I saw too much of myself in, hungry, confused, and searching for approval in all the wrong faces. I was too old to fall for him, but I did. I tried to protect him from the wolves in the business. Maybe I became one myself in the process." The note painted a picture of mentorship blurring into passion, of an older Hollywood veteran trying and failing to stay detached. On Marlon Brando, he confessed Marlon was chaos, beautiful, dangerous chaos. He challenged everything I thought I knew about masculinity. He laughed at my discipline, mocked my control. One night we fought, then kissed, then fought again. He told me, "You're afraid to feel, Burt." Maybe he was right. Marlon never feared emotion. He lived in it. I only acted it. Their encounters were described as storms, brief, electric, and unforgettable. On Montgomery Clift, he wrote, "Monty was the gentlest soul I ever knew. He carried his pain like a halo, quietly and without complaint. I think I loved him most because he didn't need me to be the hero. He saw through the armor. We'd sit for hours, not saying much, just being two men pretending the world outside didn't exist." The letter lingered on Clift, his vulnerability, his addictions, and the quiet tragedy that haunted him. Lancaster's words read less like confession and more like mourning. On Ava Gardner, he wrote, "Ava was the kind of woman you didn't forget, no matter how much you tried. She was fire. She didn't burn you, she consumed you. We had an affair during the killer's years, and I swear I learned more about lust and defiance from her than anyone else. She once told me, 'You're too serious. Burt, life's not a war.' But for me, it always was." He described Ava as both muse and mirror, a woman who matched his intensity and refused to be conquered. On Marilyn Monroe, he recalled, "Marilyn was a poem written by pain. People thought she was fragile, but they never saw how fiercely she wanted to be understood. I remember her telling me, 'I'm not dumb, Burt. I just play it that way.' We shared a weekend in Palm Springs once, two lonely people trying to be seen. She cried that night, and I didn't know how to comfort her. I still wish I had. The entry on Monroe felt like an apology, not just to her, but to all the people he couldn't save, himself included. On Elizabeth Taylor, he wrote, "Elizabeth was royalty. She lived like she knew she'd be remembered. We met late, long after my youth had faded, and she told me, 'You still have that dangerous smile, Burt.' We were both survivors by then, two aging stars pretending not to fear the dark. She kissed me once and said, 'You should have written your story.' Maybe this note is my answer." The final lines of the note were scrawled hastily, as though written in a rush of emotion. They'll remember the movies, the muscles, the grin. Let them. But I hope someone someday reads this and understands. I was not just a man of the screen. I was a man of love, too. Messy, hidden, and real. When the note ended, there was silence in the room. The myth of Burt Lancaster, the iron-jawed hero, the stoic adventurer, gave way to something more human, more fragile, and infinitely more profound. In the end, his greatest performance was perhaps this, a confession written not for the world, but for the truth he could finally face.